The Buffalo Bills 2025 schedule has been released, and we are digging into it today on the Ralph Rant. Let's go. Welcome to the Ralph Rant, your source for hard-hitting Buffalo Bills takes. Now, here's the host of the Ralph Rant, that veteran watcher of generations of Bills teams, a witness to OJ running at the rock pile, attendee of the first ever game at Rich Stadium, that opinionated so-and-so you've walked out on parties because of, the Ralph. Hey, Bills Mafia, are you ready for some football? Well, I sure am. I am the Ralph, and this is the Ralph Rant. Welcome to the episode. Today, we are discussing the Bills' 2025 regular season schedule. And the discussion today is going to center around 5 areas that I believe are pertinent. And we're going to start it out with my first impressions and then move on to schedule metrics. And then I've got the schedule broken into thirds, actually, as far as how the Bills might approach it this season. And then we're going to talk about rest differentials. That would be rest disadvantages and advantages. And finally, 10 things I love about the schedule. And no, there's not a list of what I hate about the schedule because I am that homer. I don't hate anything about the Bills. But let's get into it. I do love this schedule, and we're going to start right now with those first impressions. All right, let's jump into my first impressions of this schedule, and the overriding one is the fact that it looks like the Bills have been set up for a Super Bowl run by the NFL. We're very appreciative of that. The fact that they have the second lightest travel component of any team is wonderful, but they also play 2 divisions that are forecast to be fairly quarterback weak. That's a great thing for a team trying to make it to the Super Bowl. It worked for the Kansas City Chiefs last year, playing that same NFC South, and we're going to get into that as we go along. Now, there's a couple of historical components also to this season. Of course, it will be the 53rd and final season at the Ralph, now Highmark Stadium. It began its life as Rich Stadium, and the first regular season game there was on September 30th, 1973, where the Bills defeated the New York Jets 9-7. The Jets scored at the last second. I know this because I was at that game. And, of course, the NFL has now set up the Bills with the Jets as the final opponent at the Ralph. That's going to happen somewhere around January 4th, 2026. And if it is that day, that would be 19,089 days from that very first game in September 1973. So it's a huge component for the Bills as far as getting through this season and the excitement of being in that stadium and all the memories. And then, of course, the other historical component is Josh Allen began his career in a season opener against the very same Baltimore Ravens that the Bills will face. I believe Josh came in late in the first half. He replaced some guy named Peterman, who I think used to play on Seinfeld. But the fact is that we saw Josh that game, and ever since, that was a great start. And now we're going to see those same Ravens again, hopefully not with a 47-3 loss like Josh suffered in his very first one. Okay, let's get into the nuts and bolts of this schedule. The Bills have 5 primetime contests. They will open the Sunday Night Football season hosting the Ravens, and then in Week 3, we'll host the Dolphins on Thursday Night Football. In Week 5, it's back to Sunday Night Football hosting the Patriots, and then the Bills will travel to Atlanta to play the Falcons on Monday night in Week 6. That will be a 7:15 p.m. kick. And then finally, the Bills will go out to Houston on a Thursday night. That's their longest road trip and only venture into the Central Time Zone, and that will be in Week 12, again on Thursday night. That's 2 Thursday night games. However, the Bills do have a slight advantage with the mini-bye set up by that second game. Then we get into the 1 p.m. games, and we know Sean McDermott loves his 1 p.m. kicks. The Bills have 7 of them. Week 2, the Bills will be at the Jets. Then they host the Saints in Week 4. Then in Week 8, they're at the Panthers. In Week 10, at the Dolphins. Then in Week 11, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will visit the Ralph. And then in Weeks 15 and 16, the Bills will visit the Patriots and Browns, respectively. Then the 425 slots, the Bills have 4 of those, and they'll host the Chiefs on Week 9, be at the Steelers in Week 13, and then host the Bengals and Eagles in Weeks 14 and 17, respectively. Now, the home versus away component, the first 4 of 6 games are at home, and then we have 7 of 10 away in that block. But we have the early bye and the late mini bye, like I mentioned before, that helps. And then we've got 2 home games to end the regular season. Again, on the buys, week 7 is the buy, which is earlier than we've seen in the past few years and a little bit earlier than history is kind to for Super Bowl entrants. However, the Bills do have 2 mini buys in weeks 3 and weeks 13 based on having played Thursday night games just before. So that's a bit of a help. And then the primetime games are actually earlier. I'd like to see those a little bit more spread out. Well, one of the other observations, and this is one from one of the Buffalo Bills themselves, is Deion Dawkins indicating that he has a cold watch at the end of the season. And indeed, the Bills will play outdoors from November 30th on. We'll get into that more in the next section. And then the Bills do have Sundays to finish the season on those outdoor games. This is something I kind of like, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. And the other thing I really do like about the schedule is the division game density. Last season, we saw the Dolphins in week 2, and I don't think we saw another division opponent until past midseason. This season, the division opponents are spread fairly evenly throughout. We do have 3 in the first 5 weeks, but I don't mind that, getting a little bit of a jump on the division and getting that statement made before we're farther down the line in the season. Now, every spring when the schedule comes out, I like to take a look at it and see if it breaks into some logical pieces. Of course, back when we had a 16-game season, we were looking at 4-4-game chunks, and teams often looked at it like that. Now, it's 17 games. It doesn't divide well. It's a prime number. Of course, Josh Allen wears it. But I believe the schedule breaks nicely into thirds for the Bills. The Bills start off with the Ravens in what might be a revenge game at the Ralph, opening Sunday Night Football for the season. But I believe the Bills will do well at this. That stadium will be crazy that night. And then the Bills follow up that game with 5 contests that are quite winnable, in my opinion. Jets, Dolphins, Saints, Patriots, and Falcons. Now, the Bills come out of that at 5-1 or 6-0. We're off to a good start. So I call that the manageable early stretch. Now we get into the middling middle stretch. In the middling middle stretch, we've got 3 playoff teams, 2 non-playoff teams, 3 away games, 2 home games. Fortunately, those playoff teams do not align with the away games. The Bills will be at the Panthers, home for the Chiefs, at the Dolphins, home for the Bucs, and then at the Texans. Now, the third stretch I refer to as the home run home stretch. Sunday, 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 because that is what the Bills have in that entire stretch. All Sunday games. I'm anticipating that the Bills-Jets will likewise be on Sunday, although that game is TBD in terms of scheduling. And in this stretch, the Bills only have 1 playoff team, which happens to be the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. But that is included in the run of being at the Steelers on November 30th, Bengals on December 7th, then the Patriots and Browns and Eagles in weeks 15, 16, 17, and of course week 18, TBD with the Jets. And in this particular case, I think the Bills have a great shot at finishing this season out with a number of wins. They are all outdoors, of course, but they are all on Sunday. And Sean McDermott loves his Sunday contests and loves the fact that we can maintain some routine and a rhythm to that routine getting into the end of the season. The end of the season with the Jets. All right, let's talk about these rest differentials. No, that's not a math equation. It's my catch-all term for rest disadvantages and advantages a team may experience. Let's talk about the Bills' rest disadvantages this season. They start out week 6 at the Falcons, where Atlanta will be coming off their bye when the Bills visit them for that Monday night 7:15 p.m. kick. Then week 10 at the Dolphins will have a 3-day rest advantage, having played the Ravens 10 days previously. And then similarly, in week 14, the Bills will host the Bengals, who will also have a 3-day rest advantage, having played those same Ravens 10 days previously. Then in week 15 at the Patriots will be coming off their bye. That will make 2 teams the Bills face coming off the bye over the course of the season. I believe there is a club that faces 4 teams off the bye, so I'm not complaining too much about that. Finally, in week 17, the Bills will have a 1-day rest disadvantage to the Eagles, who will have played the previous Saturday. Now let's get into the rest advantages for the Bills, and the biggest one doesn't have a thing to do with the games themselves. The biggest one is the fact that the Bills have the second lowest travel requirement of any team in the league. They will only travel 10,546 miles and cross 2 time zones over the course of the season. Now, if you want to compare that, Kansas City, who's rather middling in this situation, is traveling twice the number of miles and going through 10 times the number of time zones. And for scale, the Chargers actually travel 37,500 miles and change and have 42 time zone changes. So this light travel requirement for the Bills sets up very, very, very well. Now, as far as the actual game advantages, in Week 4, the Bills will have a 3-day rest advantage over the Saints. And the Saints, when they visit the Bills, will be playing their second road game, having been at Seattle the previous week. Then, Week 8 at the Panthers, the Bills will be coming off their bye. Week 9 versus the Chiefs will have played the previous Monday night versus the Commanders, so that will give the Bills a 1-day rest advantage. And then finally, the Bills will have 3 days advantage over the Steelers when they visit them in Pittsburgh. Pretty good situation for the rest advantages for the Bills. All right, for our last segment, I'm going to get into the 10 things I love about this schedule. And no, there is not a list of 10 things I don't like or hate about it, because I'm pretty satisfied with the schedule as it sits. So let's jump into them. I'll repeat myself here for the first, but it bears repeating. That's the fact that I love the Bills have the number 2 lowest travel requirement of any team in the league for this season. That is going to pay huge dividends on this run for the Super Bowl and perhaps the perfect season. Number 2, I love the early stretch, especially getting the Ravens early in the marquee game, their revenge game. I think the Bills handle their business there, and then they go on to play the Jets, Dolphins, Saints, Patriots, and Falcons, and have a fine chance of being 5-1, maybe 6-0 after that start. Number 3, I love that the Bills come out of the bye at the Panthers. Buffalo is perfect out of the bye under Sean McDermott, but regrettably, a lot of those games, the Bills have looked sluggish. I'd rather see them playing the Panthers than going to face the Chiefs directly out of the bye. Number 4, I love that the Bills' rookies in depth, on the defensive side especially, will have a chance to get some valuable minutes early in the season with the suspended absence of Larry Ogunjobi and Michael Hoyt for those first 6 games. I think it's huge. We see examples of this in the past. For example, Dorian Williams, who played in place of the injured Matt Milano. And early on, we were worried that Dorian wasn't really good at coverage and so forth, but he got those minutes, and he has now emerged into this monster. A lot of times, it just takes guys getting minutes on the field. The absence of these 2 free agents is going to help tremendously. Next, number 5, I love that the Bills get Ogunjobi and Hoyt back after the bye. This is a really interesting situation because these free agents are good ball players, and there will be no film on them at all in a Buffalo uniform. Teams will not know what to expect. And not only that, when they're added, this will increase the rotation, making fresher legs all the way around, with their fresh legs, of course, coming in that early. I think this is absolutely huge for these guys coming back, and it's going to be a sneak attack on the rest of the NFL. Number 6, I love that the Bills play the NFC South. The NFC South does have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield, and of course, Michael Penix with Atlanta. But I don't like the quarterback power of that division, and I think that helps the Bills very, very much playing that division. And of course, I don't have this on the list, but truthfully, the same situation also applies with playing the NFC North, where we've got at least 2 teams where we don't know who the quarterback is going to be. So that is a great thing for the Bills playing those 2 divisions. Number 7, I love that the Bills' hot weather games are late October at the Panthers and in early November at the Dolphins. Those are both 1 o'clock kicks, but at that time of the year, it should not be that bad, and hopefully it'll make Deion Dawkins a little happier because of all the outdoor games they're facing at the end of the season. Next, number 8, I love that 3 of 4 of the 4:25 p.m. starts are at home. That would be the Chiefs, Bengals, and Eagles. These are not primetime games, but they are prime. And the fact that the Bills have 3 or 4 of them at home is huge for this march to the Vince. Number 9, I love that the Bills play 5 straight Sundays to finish the season. Now, I realize these are all outdoor games, the thing that Deion Dawkins identified right off the bat. But the fact is that the straight Sundays are a nice routine for the Bills. There is no holiday games. There are no night games or Thursday games. No Sunday nights, Monday nights. The fact is that the straight Sundays set up a very nice routine for the Bills finishing out the season. And then number 10, I love that the NFL saw fit to make the final game at the Ralph versus the New York Jets, who were the very first game at the Ralph. I think it's a historical situation. I think they recognized it. I'm very interested to see when that game is actually scheduled. I don't know if there's a Monday night game at the end of the regular season or not. That would be cool, having it the very last game of the season to close the Ralph, but only if the Bills have a first-round bye as a result of playoff seeding. All right, anyway, that's going to do it for this schedule review. Thank you so much for being here for this episode. If you want to punch like or punch the subscribe button, I'd love it. I appreciate it very much. We're going to be coming back with more and more content. Our next show is going to be a very interesting one on the new Highmark Stadium. And in that, I'm going to talk about a lot of the fan experience, some of the myths that could be broken, and we're going to start a push to have it named the Ralph. So until then, this is the Ralph Rant. I'm out. Go Bills.